Today we are doing the nation state. Nation state is composed of two words, nation and state. State is easy to understand. It is just the supreme executive authority sovereign to a territory. The nation is a new idea, and it's the idea of a people with a shared identity, whether it's a language or a culture or a history or ethnicity. Okay? So, for example, the Jews were, for the longest time, a nation rather than a state. Okay? It was only until the founding of Israel that the Jews had a nation state. Today, there are many peoples, including the Kurds, who are a people living in the Middle East. They are a nation, but they don't have a state. Okay? And this idea of the nation state, it is probably the most powerful ideology in human history. It has led people to tremendous achievements, but it's also led people to catastrophic wars, including World War I and World War II. All right? So first thing I want to do is go over where this idea comes from. And in many ways, it is the culmination of different religious, economic, and social cultural factors, okay? So let's look at them individually. Religion. All right. So as we discussed last class, with the Protestant Reformation, there is now a crisis of faith because Christianity creates the idea of the individual. The individual is in direct connection with God. Before, the church would mediate this connection. So you didn't have to worry about God, you just had to worry about the church. If you did what the church told you, you could be promised entry into heaven. The Protestant Reformation removes the Catholic Church from the equation. Now you are in direct communion with God, and you must show absolute faith if you are to achieve salvation, okay? And so this creates a crisis of faith because as an individual, how do you know you truly believe in God? You know you love your mothers, but do you love your mother every single day, all the time? Probably not, okay? But in religion, you cannot doubt God ever. You can never throw a temper tantrum at God, or you will be sent to hell. So it creates this conflict, okay? And historically, there have been different solutions to this problem. So the first solution that people propose is the idea of money. Let's just replace God with money, right? And that gives us the idea of capitalism. The Calvinists believe this, okay? Like God is money, money is God. And if you accumulate enough wealth, then that shows your absolute faith in God and God's love for you, all right? So that's the idea of money. Then people have said, no, God is reason. All right? So as long as you pursue reason, as long as you show enlightenment, then that shows your faith in God. Okay? And this gives us the idea of the Enlightenment. Enlightenment. As well as liberalism. All right? Then others have said, nope, God is the individual itself. Okay, so as long as you believe in yourself, as long as you engage in a process of self-discovery and self-growth, then that will lead you into heaven. And this was most famously proposed, and we discussed this last class, by Freud and Jung. And this has become the basis for what we call modernism, right? Which is still with us today. And then there's proposed another solution to this problem, and it's the idea that God is in the nation. All right? And it turns out that of all these ideas, the most powerful, the most resilient, the most enduring is this idea that by celebrating your nation, you are celebrating your faith in God. Why? Because the other solutions propose a problem. And the problem it creates is the individual is still isolated from others. Okay? It still creates a problem of alienation. And the nation solves this problem, right? Because a nation has to be, by definition, a community of individuals with a shared identity. So the nation is the perfect solution because it both solves the problem of religion and it solves the problem of politics and community. In fact, the nation is a conflation of both religion and politics. Okay? And that's why historically it has been the most emotionally the most powerful idea. All right? Does that make sense? All right? So from a religious purpose, the nation state solves the problem of faith and alienation. All right, now let's look at economics. So during this time, you have the Industrial Revolution. And there are many issues created by the Industrial Revolution. The first problem is you need to constantly expand because you need markets and resources, right? So expansion. Another way of saying this is that you need to engage in imperialism. Another problem created by the problem of the Industrial Revolution is the rise of the bourgeoisie. Okay, the bourgeoisie. Historically, it was the priests and the warriors who were the elite of society. But now with the Industrial Revolution, the bourgeoisie, the industrialists and the capitalists are now the new elite. And as such, they obviously want more political power. But what they really want is property rights, right? They want to be assured that the wealth they've generated can be protected and inherited by their children and their grandchildren and their great-grandchildren. Now, the problem is this. The problem is the system of the monarchy cannot really ensure property rights. And the reason why is the king can be overthrown, okay? The aristocracy can be overthrown. And this is what happens throughout European history. But the nation state cannot be overthrown, right? Does that make sense? So the nation state is a solution to the problem of property rights for the bourgeoisie. Also, the nation state has the resources to engage in imperialism. And it has the desire to engage in imperialism. Monarchies are usually pretty conservative. They like to maintain their position, and they will form alliances in order to maintain their position. The nation state is aggressive and expansionist and imperialist. Okay? Does that make sense? So from an economic perspective, the nation state solves the problem created by the Industrial Revolution. Okay? So that's the economic factor. Then let's look at the social-cultural factor. Social-cultural aspect of this. So what's happening because of the Industrial Revolution is that people are moving from the towns. Oh, sorry, I said this wrong. People are moving from the villages to the cities. Okay? You have this massive process of urbanization. Also, because of the Industrial Revolution, there's more trade. There's now the market, right? So these goods are proliferating throughout the entire country. Okay? And this creates the idea of systemization and standardization. And you have mobility of people, of goods, and of ideas. The mobility, and then you have new technology, right? Not just in factories, and not just in like steamships, but also in print. And this spreads literacy and information. So think of this as just the beginning of globalization, right? In China, we're inundated with new ideas all the time because of the internet, because of access to the world. But for people, for most people, this can be frustrating and bewildering. And it creates psychological issues, okay? Primarily, the idea of enemy. Enemy just means a loss of sense of cultural rootedness, right? As things change, you don't know how to adapt to the change. Your values are based on the past. You're not sure if your values can confront the future, okay? Also, alienation. Alienation just means a sense of powerlessness, okay? You lack agency. These changes are happening so fast and so quickly, you don't know if you can control these changes. Also, disenchantment. Disenchantment means all these changes are dehumanizing, right? You're becoming just a cog in the machine. You're becoming no more than a machine. In today's world, AI could possibly replace us all, right? So it's creating all this doubt, all this confusion. And the nation state, okay, so and there are different solutions to this. There's communism, there's liberalism, and then there's nationalism. And for people, okay, all three ideas are appealing, but communism preaches the idea of international solidarity, right? Which can be for people even more confusing. Liberalism preaches the idea of individual rights. But if you're poor, the right to speak, the right to organize does not really apply to you. And the fact of the matter is that most people are poor. But nationalism, okay, the fact that we are one group of people in a struggle against other groups of people, this is powerful, okay? This is appealing. Also, if you think about it, nationalism can absorb other ideas, right? You can be both a nationalist and a liberal. And in fact, most people were. You can also be a nationalist and a communist, which was what Joseph Stalin proposed, right? And this is what Mao Zedong proposed. So nationalism is the one ideology that can absorb and control all other ideologies. Okay, does that make sense? So for these three particular reasons, religious transformation, economic transformation, and social cultural transformation, the nation state became the best idea of that time, and it spread really quickly. Okay? All right, so